The war was over. The air still smelled of smoke and metal. Giant ships floated above the ruins of the alien capital. Humans had won. Cheers echoed through the broken city, but deep in the corner of a dark transport cage, a young alien girl sat with cold chains around her wrists. Her name was Lyra, and she had lost everything. She was one of the last daughters of the royal bloodline of Zareth, but today she was just a prize, a war trophy. Soldiers passed by her cell laughing, calling her pretty catch, spoils of war, or worse. She didn't respond. Her silver eyes stared forward, empty and cold. Then came a change. Heavy boots approached. A tall man stood in front of her cell. Human, black armor, a deep scar on his jaw. His name was Commander Rain Maddox, the man who led the final battle that broke her people. The soldier next to him chuckled. "This one's for you, Commander. High Command thought you deserved something beautiful." The cell opened with a loud hiss. Lyra didn't move. She expected pain, humiliation. She had heard stories of what happened to female prisoners. She prepared her mind to be silent, to take it, to survive. But instead, the man knelt in front of her. His voice was calm. "Can you walk?" She looked at him. No anger, no hunger, just tired eyes. She didn't answer. He sighed. Then gently, he reached for the chains, but not to tighten them. He unlocked them. The metal fell to the floor with a loud clang. She stared at her freed wrists, confused. "I'm not your enemy anymore," he said. "Come with me." Her legs trembled as she stood. She had not eaten in days, but she followed. They walked through the human base. Whispers followed them. "Is that her? The alien princess?" "Commander Maddox has strange taste." Lyra didn't care. Her eyes stayed low, but her mind raced. Why wasn't she in chains? Why didn't he treat her like property? He brought her to his private quarters. It wasn't a cell. It had a bed, clean clothes, even a table with food. She paused at the doorway, unsure. "You're safe here," Rain said. "No one will hurt you. You don't have to serve anyone. You're free." She looked at him sharply. "Free?" Her voice was dry. "You won the war. I am yours now." "No," he said, stepping back. "You are not mine. You are just here. That's all." He left the room without another word. Lyra sat down, her hands shaking. What kind of human was this? Later that night, she didn't sleep. She sat near the window, staring at the stars. Her home planet was one of them, burned, broken, maybe gone. Her people called humans monsters. But this one, this Rain Maddox, he confused her. She thought back to the battle, how humans surrounded her palace, how the bombs shook the sky, how she ran through smoke to hide. Then the hands grabbed her, dragged her into a cage like an animal. That was the last time she cried. Now she didn't know what to feel. The door opened. Rain entered, holding a small plate. Warm food, a piece of bread, roasted root from her own planet's soil. "I asked the cooks to make this," he said. "Did I get it right?" She stared at the food, then at him. "Why?" He sat across from her, setting the plate down. "I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of war, tired of hate." "You killed my people," she said coldly. "I did," he replied, "and I will never forget it." She waited for excuses. None came. He looked at her, not with guilt, but with something else. Regret. "You're not a gift," he said. "They called you spoils. I call you Lyra." She hadn't heard her name from anyone since the day her palace fell. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she picked up the bread, slowly, carefully, and took a bite. Warm tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Outside the room, soldiers laughed and celebrated victory. But inside, a silent bond had begun, one of chains, and maybe one of healing. The base was quiet at dawn. Lyra stood near the edge of the courtyard garden watching the sky turn orange. She hadn't spoken since last night. She hadn't run either. Not yet. But her mind was planning. Every step she took. Through the human camp she counted exits, measured guard rotations, watched where Rain placed the security cards. He said she was free, but no one frees the enemy. Not without a reason. She touched the edge of the table where last night's food had been placed. Her name. He had used her name. No one had spoken it with kindness since the war began. That made her nervous. Maybe it was a trick. And so when Rain left that morning for a field inspection, Lyra made her move. She took nothing with her. No food, no shoes. Only her memory of old trails and ruins near the human base. She climbed over the outer wall using a discarded hover crate and slipped into the wild forest beyond. The trees were twisted, sharp. Ash still hung in the air from a battle fought weeks ago. Her feet bled on the rough ground, but she didn't stop. Freedom was not a gift. She had to take it or die trying, but freedom didn't greet her. A group of bounty scavengers spotted her, near the river canyon, humans and aliens who made money catching runaways. They laughed when they saw her. Look what we've got here. A war trophy off the leash. She tried to fight. She grabbed a rock and slammed it into one of their knees. But there were too many. They hit her, pushed her down. One reached for his knife. Then a voice roared across the trees. Let her go. It was Rain. He stood at the top of the hill, rifle in one hand, rage in his eyes. The scavengers turned, surprised. One tried to lie. She's a runaway, not yours anymore. She was never mine, Rain growled. But she's not yours either. He fired once, not to kill, but close enough to burn the ground by their feet. The scavengers scattered like bugs. Rain rushed down the slope and knelt beside Lyra. She was breathing hard, her face bruised, her hands shaking. She didn't look at him. He touched her shoulder. Why? She whispered. Because I don't believe you. Rain didn't reply. He lifted her gently into his arms. She didn't resist. Back at the base, the medics treated her wounds. Rain stayed outside her room, sitting quietly. Hours passed. When she finally opened the door, she didn't say thank you. Instead, she looked at him with distant eyes. I thought you wanted to break me, like the others. I don't, he said. Then what do you want? Rain stood slowly. I want you to live, not in fear, not in chains. Just live. She stared at him. You confuse me, human. Good, he replied. Maybe confusion is better than hate. She didn't smile. But for the first time, she sat beside him. The next day, something changed. Lyra didn't run. She walked the base with her head up. The other soldiers stared, some with disgust, some with curiosity. A few even muttered behind. Rain's back, he soughed. He treats her like a guest. Is he falling for her? Rain ignored them. Lyra watched everything, not as a prisoner, but as someone trying to understand. That evening, she found Rain in the operations room staring at old war reports. She stood at the door for a while before speaking. You have questions? About my people's tech, don't you? He looked up, surprised. Yes, I do. Then ask, she said. And just like that, the human who didn't take was given something. Her trust. Lyra stood in front of the large hollow map, her silver fingers hovering above ancient Zarethian symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. Commander, Rain watched from the side, arms crossed. He didn't interrupt her. He had learned not to rush her when she was thinking. This moment wasn't just about learning alien language, it was about learning her. This symbol, Lyra finally said, her voice soft, does not mean target. It means hope. Your people misread it. Rain leaned forward. We thought it marked weapon stockpiles. No, she said. It marked shelters. For children and mothers. A cold silence fell between them. Rain looked down, shame on his face. We bombed all those sites. Lyra didn't reply. but her eyes said everything. The next few days became a rhythm. She taught. He listened. At first, it was only tactical, maps, defense systems, translation of old battle texts. But then she started telling him stories. Not war stories. Stories of her childhood, of how her people used music to store memory, of the stars her mother used to trace with her fingers while singing lullabies. Rain found himself asking questions, not as a commander, but as a man trying to understand the heart of a lost world. And Lyra slowly began to answer. One night he brought her a small device. "This was found on your ship," he said. "We couldn't turn it on." She took it, her hands trembling. It was a memory stone, a sacred item from her people. "It holds voices," she whispered, echoes of those who lived. She activated it. A soft alien song filled the room. Pure, haunting, beautiful. A woman's voice. Her mother's. Rain sat down beside her, silent. Lyra didn't cry, but she closed her eyes, letting the music wrap around her like a forgotten blanket. And when the song ended, she did something she had never done since she was captured. She smiled, but peace didn't last. The other officers noticed the change. She spends too much time with him. She's playing him. Or he's losing his edge. One morning, Rain found a note on his door. "Traitor to your kind." He burned it, but Lyra saw the ashes and knew. She told him, "They will turn on you, like they turned on us." "Let them try," he said simply. Later, Lyra found herself alone in the strategy room tracing lines on a human map. An officer entered, Lieutenant Kara, one of Rain's oldest companions. "You think he cares about you?" Kara spat. "You're a prisoner, a pet." Lyra didn't respond. Kara moved closer. "He's just confused. You'll go back in chains soon enough." Lyra looked at her, cold, calm. "He's not the one confused." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the officer standing there, furious. That night, Lyra sat beside Rain under the stars. She asked quietly, "Do you believe in soul memory?" Rain raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "It's when someone touches your life so deeply your soul remembers it even after death." He looked at her, serious. "Then I hope I'm someone your soul will remember." Lyra didn't speak, but her hand reached out, slowly, until her fingers touched his. For the first time, not as teacher and student, but as something more. The storm hit fast. One moment the sky was calm. The next, red lightning cracked across the horizon. Dust storms swept over the planet's surface, blinding and wild. Rain gripped the controls of the scout hover as it shook under the wind's force. "We have to land, now!" Beside him, Lyra braced herself, clutching a datapad full of old Zarethian locations they were exploring together. Their mission had been peaceful: search ruins, recover lost knowledge. But peace never lasted long. In a galaxy full of ghosts, they crash-landed near the ruins of a fallen temple, once a sacred place to Lyra's people. Rain stumbled out, coughing. The wind howled like a beast. "Are you okay?" Lyra nodded but said nothing. She was staring at the cracked stone pillars, symbols of her ancestors. Broken, forgotten. Then she saw movement, figures hiding behind rubble. Rain noticed them too. "Take cover," he shouted, pulling her behind a fallen column. Blaster shots ripped through the air. Raiders. Not human, not Zarethian, just scavengers hunting the weak. They didn't care that Lyra was royalty, or that Rain was a commander. All they saw were two easy targets. Rain returned fire, fast and precise, but there were too many. Lyra's hands trembled as she tried to activate an old temple shield device, one that hadn't worked in years. "I can't get it on," she yelled over the wind. Rain shielded her body with his own as another blast tore through the air. "Then we hold the line." He growled. She looked up at him. You're going to die for me? He smirked. No. We're going to live. Then a sharp cry rang out. A bolt of plasma struck Rain in the side. He fell hard, gasping. Lyra screamed. She dropped beside him. His armor was smoking, blood leaking from his side. Stay awake. She cried. You saved me before. Let me save you now. Rain coughed. Go. Leave me. Lyra's voice broke. I'm not running again. The scavengers moved closer. She grabbed his blaster, stood up, and faced them. She fought like a storm. Graceful storm of fire and rage. Every blast was aimed with memory, techniques from her warrior training. They had once called her a daughter of peace, but now her hands knew war. She didn't stop until the last scavenger fell to the dust. Silence returned, but the fire inside her had only just begun. Lyra dropped the weapon and rushed back to Rain. His eyes were half closed. Stay with me, she whispered. She used scraps from his gear to slow the bleeding. Her tears fell freely now. I thought you were just a human, she whispered, but you're the only one who ever treated me like more. Rain smiled faintly. Still, think I confuse you? She laughed through her tears. Yes, completely. Then she leaned in, her forehead touched his, alien to human, wounded too. Wounded, and for a moment, there was no war between them, only warmth, only connection, only the fire beneath the skin. The base was quiet that evening, too quiet. Lyra sat beside Rain's bed in the medical wing. Machines beeped softly. His wound was healing, but he hadn't woken up in 2 days. She hadn't left his side. Others came in and out, doctors, officers, but she ignored them. Her eyes stayed fixed on the man who had taken a plasma bolt to protect her, the same man who once walked into her cage without a weapon and gave her freedom. She reached for his hand and held it gently in both of hers. You said I don't owe you anything, she whispered. Then why do I feel like I do? Her voice cracked. She wasn't used to speaking her heart. Her people didn't believe in sharing pain. But this human had shown her something different, something dangerous, softness and love. She stood, walking over to the window. The stars above shimmered. The war had taken so much from her family, her world, even her name. But in this silent room, she had found something no army could give. Peace. Suddenly, a voice behind her croaked, weak but real. I missed your stories. She turned fast. Rain's eyes were open, barely, but they were full of life. You're awake, she gasped, rushing to him. Hard to sleep with you pacing like a trapped cat. He smiled faintly. She hit his arm softly, then rested her head against his chest. Don't joke, I thought I lost you. I told you we would live, he whispered. Later that night, the two sat on the edge of the medical bed, a blanket wrapped around both of them. Lyra handed him a small silver object. It was her clan, crest one she had hidden in her clothes since the day she was captured. I want you to have it, she said. Rain frowned. It's yours. It means something. It meant my duty to my people, she replied softly. Now, it reminds me of you. He looked at her, carefully, quietly, like a man seeing a star for the first time. You saved me more than once, she said, but I still don't understand you. Rain touched her hand. Maybe it's not about understanding. Maybe it's about choosing. Choosing what? To care, even when it's hard, even when the galaxy says we shouldn't. The next day, the wind carried whispers through the base. The alien girl and the human commander. They were close now, too close. Some called it betrayal, others called it weakness. But neither Rain nor Lyra cared anymore. They trained together, ate together, spoke in languages only the two of them shared. For the first time in her life, Lyra laughed. And When she did, Rain knew he would protect that sound at any cost. One evening, Lyra stood at the center of the empty training ring. She held a human combat staff and moved with grace, each step a mix of her people's dance and Earth's battle style. Rain watched from the edge. "You're blending both cultures now," he said, impressed. She spun, smiling. "Why not? You blended into my heart." He froze. So did she. The words had slipped, but they hung in the air like starlight. Rain stepped forward, slowly. No orders, no armor, just a man with scars, facing a woman once called a war prize. "I never wanted to take anything from you," he said. "You didn't," Lyra replied. "You gave me back myself." And when their hands met in the quiet night, no one could take that moment away. Rain walked into the command chamber and felt it immediately. Tension. 3 high-ranking officers sat behind the central desk, their eyes sharp, cold. The oldest one, General Halrick, didn't waste time. "Commander Maddox, sit down." Rain sat, jaw clenched. "You've been warned before," Halrick said, tossing a report on the table. "Your relationship with the alien girl is a problem." "She has a name," Rain replied calmly. "Lyra. She was an enemy combatant," another officer snapped. "She still is." Rain's voice turned quiet but heavy. "She saved my life. She's helped decode over a dozen lost alien sites. She's not a threat. She's the reason we've had no more attacks in this sector." Halrick leaned forward. "Your soldiers are questioning your loyalty. You're protecting her like she's your own." Rain looked him dead in the eye. "She is my own." Back in their shared quarters, Lyra stood at the window, fingers pressed to the glass. She knew something was wrong. Rain's steps were slower than usual when he entered, his eyes heavy. "They gave me a new assignment," he said softly. "Off-world." She turned sharply. "Without me?" He nodded. "They want you sent to a science facility," he added. "For study." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "Like an object?" Rain stepped forward. "I said no." "You refused a direct order?" "I did." She stared at him. "Then they'll come after you," she whispered. "I know." She touched his face. "You should have let me go." "I can't." That night, Rain packed only what they needed: food, water, stolen access cards. They moved, like shadows. Alarms were one step behind them. Rain had disabled security cameras. Lyra rerouted patrol paths using alien hacking skills. Together they moved as one, human instinct and alien grace. As they reached the hangar, Lyra turned to him. "You're throwing everything away for me." "No," Rain replied, gripping her hand. "I'm leaving everything for you." Then the gate opened, and a familiar voice called out, "Commander." It was Lieutenant Kara, weapon drawn. Her eyes flicked to Lyra, filled with fury. "You've gone too far, Maddox. I've gone far enough to know this is right." Kara aimed the weapon. "Step away from her." Lyra stepped in front of Rain. "She's unarmed," he shouted. "I wasn't talking to her," Kara said coldly. "You're the danger now." For a moment time froze. Lyra whispered something in her language. Rain didn't know the words, but the tone sounded like goodbye. Suddenly she turned, grabbed a metal crate, and flung it at the lights above. Darkness swallowed the hangar. Blaster. Fire lit the air. Rain pulled her close and ran. By the time the lights came back, they were gone. Hours later, they sat inside a stolen scout ship flying through the cold stars. Rain held the controls. Lyra sat beside him, silent. Then she spoke. "I'm scared." He looked at her. "So am I. But I've never felt more alive," she added. He smiled. "That's how you know it's real." They stared ahead. No maps, no orders, just 2 people the galaxy tried to tear apart. Finally flying free. The stars outside the ship glowed like endless fireflies. Rain sat quietly at the cockpit controls, guiding the small scout ship through deep space. Behind him, Lyra stood barefoot, her eyes wide as she stared out the back window. Neither of them spoke for a while. They had no destination, no orders, no armies chasing them, for now. But even in that silence, something powerful filled the space between them. Freedom. They landed on a remote moon, once home to an abandoned Zerethian temple. Nature had taken back the stone walls. Wild vines covered cracked columns. Water dripped from the ceiling of the old sanctuary like slow tears. "This place," Lyra whispered. "I was brought here once as a child, for the bonding ceremony." Rain turned to her. "What is that?" She looked at him with a quiet smile. "When two souls promise to walk together, even when everything else falls apart." They began rebuilding the ruins, not for religion or war, but for life. Rain repaired solar panels to power the old systems. Lyra planted seeds in the overgrown soil, hoping they would grow again. Together, they created a home from forgotten stones and broken history. Weeks passed. Rumors began to spread across the galaxy. Some said a human war hero had gone rogue. Others whispered of a Zerethian princess who had disappeared. But in truth, they had not vanished. They had simply chosen each other. One evening, under the soft light of twin moons, Rain took a small metal ring from his pocket, something he had forged himself using melted pieces of his old dog tags. He held it out to her. "I have nothing left to offer you," he said, voice low. "No title, no army, no future that's safe." Lyra stepped close. "You gave me something no empire ever could," she said softly. "A place to belong." Then she took the ring and slid it onto her finger, not as property, not as spoils, but as an equal, as a partner. In time, travelers came, lost aliens, forgotten soldiers, exiles from many worlds. They heard about the sanctuary. They came with wounds, with fear, with nothing. Rain and Lyra welcomed them all. Their home became a haven, a symbol not of war, but of healing. One day, a young child from a distant planet asked Lyra, "Were you really given away as a prize?" Lyra smiled gently and knelt before the girl. "Yes," she said, "but I became something else." "What did you become?" Looked toward Rain, who was laughing with a group of children as he helped them build a garden. "I became loved," Lyra answered. The galaxy tried to name her slave, spoils, captive. But in the end, only one name remained, Lyra Maddox. Not because she was taken, but because she chose.